Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
Why are you an atheist? Why are you an atheist? That's our question today. Well, if you're an unbeliever, maybe you'd like to share with us some of the reasons why you do not find arguments for God convincing, or you don't find God all around you, as maybe some others do, including ourselves. We're perfectly willing to share our position. We do believe in God, and we'd love to talk with you about why you do not. 888-318-7884 is the number. I am Cy Kellett, your host. This is Catholic Answers Live, and our guest this hour, Trent Horn, is the author of Persuasive Pro-Life. He's the author of Hard Sayings. He's the author of Answering Atheism, and now he is the author of Why We're Catholic. Trent, thanks for being with us today.
Always glad to be here.
And when we ask people, why are you an atheist, what's the primary thing that we're looking for? Reasons or experiences? Or does it not matter? Maybe someone, there could be either one.
Sure, it could be either. I guess what I would like to know is, it's possible, I would hope that it's possible, you could be someone who believes in God. Many people do. But if you were an atheist, you don't. And I would think hopefully there are reasons or an explanation for why you don't believe in God when other people do. And we should talk about those, because if God does exist, I would say an atheist is missing out on a whole lot. If God does not exist, then someone like myself or you, Cy, would be deluded, essentially, or at least very mistaken. And that would severely impact how we lead our lives. So it's an important question to answer. What is God like? What do we mean by the word God? And does God exist? Is there a God? Is theism true? Or is atheism true, that there is no God or just no good reason to believe in God? So those are questions I would enjoy talking about with callers who identify as an atheist or an agnostic or someone who doesn't believe in God. So wherever you might be on the spectrum, we'd enjoy talking about it.
888-318-7884, the number. But I guess I have in mind the person who says, I don't have any experience of God. I've never run into that. What do we say to that person?
Well, I've never run into God at the grocery store either, myself. I've probably come across some people in less than ideal circumstances who claim to be God, but might be a tad mentally unbalanced. So I think I would agree with the person that no, I don't see God or come across him in my daily experience, because God is not a thing in the universe like, a mountain or a molehill or the ocean or other people. God is the reason for everything that exists. God is infinite being itself, and he is the sustainer of the universe. So God exists beyond space and time, but his effects can be felt in space and time, both through the fact that there is a universe that is explained by him, and also when he personally reveals himself to us. That for me, I had to go through arguments for God first before I could have kind of an internal witness of God from the Holy Spirit in my heart. So you kind of have to go it both ways. Sometimes before you have that internal witness of God, you have to sift through kind of the external witnesses or reasons you might find in the natural world.
888-318-7884 is the number. Happy to take your call if you are not a believer, if you do not believe in God and would like to share your reasons for that with us. And if you're willing to discuss those with us, we'd love to have your call, 888-318-7884. And Trent, you have that whole book, Answering Atheism, but in the newest book, Why We're Catholic, you handle this in a smaller kind of bite-sized thing. Why? So maybe you could give us a little idea of what you say there to some maybe someone who's looking. The book is about the whole thing, the whole enchilada, the Catholic thing. But but God's a big part of that enchilada. I didn't mean to make God a part of an enchilada, but you know what I'm saying.
Well, since God is the sustainer of all things that exist, in a loose sense, God is a part of an enchilada. or all of the enchiladas, because without God, there would be no enchiladas.
Thank you for
so
saying
there's your deep thought for the day.
Yeah.
Without God, there would be no enchiladas. What I Do and Why We're Catholic, that book was written for a very broad audience. I wanted anybody really who could read and think about these important questions to see that as Catholics, we have good reasons for what we believe. And here are those reasons. Here's why we're Catholic, why we believe in God, in Jesus, the Bible, and the Church. So I have to cover them all briefly, but I try to present the best reasons in the book. And in the first few chapters, I talk about why we believe there's a creator of the universe. This creator is God, and this creator, God, has a loving plan for us that will conquer evil, that God is love, and God will conquer evil and bring those who desire a relationship with him into union with him for all eternity. So I talk about that there. Answering Atheism was my very first book that I wrote. And in that book, I wanted to comprehensively address the arguments for and against God. And even in that book, there's still areas that I wasn't able to touch, because there are many broad subjects related to philosophy, science, history, a lot of things that come up. And I'm happy to address here on the show and in other formats. But Answering Atheism is where, to continue the analogy, is where I tried to get the whole enchilada of the atheism debate in one book, whereas there's just a sampler in Why We're Catholic.
We always fill up with calls on these days. To the caller thinking about whether to call, we can give you our word that we will do our very best to converse civilly and reasonably and responsibly and all that, and we hope that you will be willing to as well. And we would genuinely like to hear, why are you an atheist? As I said, we get lots of calls on these days, so you're going to want to dial 888-318-7884, and we should probably just go straight to phones, Trent.
Sure.
Joe in VZ, Maine, listening on 90.3 FM. Why are you an atheist?
Oh, hello there. I wouldn't call myself someone that is like immediately dismisses anything. What I would say is the idea of trying to grasp something that is just completely unfathomable. It just seems like that there are better ways to consume your time. It's like trying to understand what the fourth dimension looks like from a third dimensional standpoint. It's just so hard to do. Any person that wants to try to actually look to understand, from my analogy, what the fourth dimension looks like, all the power to you, man. No problem with that whatsoever. But the way I just look at it from my own personal life is I would just like to do things in my life that are a bit more at home, for lack of a better word, something more grounded in reality. So nothing to do with hate or anything like that. It's more of just, hey, here's a really nifty idea. That's cool, but there's other things that preoccupy my time.
Okay, so you think that the idea of God is not very relevant, and why would we waste our time thinking about something that would be like trying to ponder what it's like to live in the fourth dimension? That would be, and that's
absolutely.
Well, let me put it to you this way, Joe. I would agree with you that I can't really understand what it's like to be God. Like, what would it be like to be omniscient or to be omnipotent, to not have a body, to be present to all things at once, to be outside of space and time? I don't know what that's like, but I don't think it's absurd to say, well, there is a world, there is a reality. We should be grounded in reality, but it's important to ask questions about that reality. Like, why is there a reality instead of none at all? Why is there something that could not exist? Well, the most logical answer from my perspective is that there must be something that has to exist that explains why there is a universe instead of nothing at all. It also explains a lot of other things, too, because I think that for you say, well, let's keep it more at home. It sounds like you'd want to live a life with purpose. Would you say you strive to find purpose in life?
Well, that also goes into sort of my philosophy, which, there's a category of, like, atheism and agnostics that you use, but the way I look at purpose and fate, even though I like to read a lot about the idea of fate, is that it's just really meaningless to find like your like divine purpose in life. If you have something that you think is great, or you think it's worth working your entire life to go after that belief or understanding of something for the rest of your life, all the power to you. That, I think, actually the journey to get the answers that you want in life, I think makes life even more reasonable. But the idea
Joe,
of
can I ask you a question?
actually get an answer it just seems really unfounded to me, and I prefer to have answers that are more grounded.
Okay, well, I think that seems a little contradictory to me, that, you know, what's more important is the journey than the answers or the destination itself. That might make sense if, you know, you just want to travel and just see the sights, or in that case the journey really is your destination. But it seems to me like it's possible for someone to waste their time or to waste their life, to say that, well, as long as you put your heart into it, it doesn't really matter. I think most of us could see there are places where we, deep down inside, we say, wait a minute, that's not what you're made for. You were made for more, that you have dignity as a human being, you have intrinsic worth. And if we have a purpose or an end built within us that we should strive for, and I think we all do, and we recognize that, that, I think, indirectly points back to a creator, an all-good creator, who has given us this kind of purpose or end. And I talk about this more in my book, Answering Atheism. And I'd love to stretch this out more, because the purpose and meaning of life is probably the most important thing we can talk about, but we're running up to our first break here, and we've really enjoyed having you call in. Definitely call back when we have more time to discuss this important issue.
Thanks, Joe, but we are late for a break. We'll be right back with more Why Are You an Atheist? With Trent Horn on Catholic Answers Live.
Don't you just love listening to Trent Horn? Did you know you can book Trent or any of our other great speakers to speak at your parish or special event? Contact one of our seminar coordinators through the Speakers Bureau section on Catholic.com today to find out more information.
Howdy folks, this is Jimmy Aiken, and I'm here to tell you about a very special promotion we look forward to every year. It's our annual store-wide summer sale in the online shop at Catholic.com. This online event features savings from 10 to 50% and more in some cases on every book, tract, CD, DVD, ebook, and MP3 we carry, including my newest book, A Daily Defense. With lower prices and a great selection of solid Catholic resources, it's a sale you can't afford to miss. So log on now and all this month at shop.catholic.com and take advantage of our very special prices. You know it's all good stuff because it's from the people you know and trust at Catholic Answers. That's shop.catholic.com.
Catholic Answers Live is brought to you in part by CatholicSingles.com, the website for Catholics who want to meet others who share their faith and values for faith, fellowship, and love. You can learn more at CatholicSingles.com. Catholic Answers Live thanks CatholicSingles.com for their generous support.
The Catholic Answers Minute. I'm Father Vincent Serpa. In Matthew 12:38, some scribes and Pharisees asked Jesus for a sign. He answered, "An evil and unfaithful generation seeks a sign, but no sign will be given it except the sign of Jonah the prophet. Just as Jonah was in the belly of the whale 3 days and 3 nights, so will the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights." The Jews of the time were not concerned with accuracy with time the way we are. Jesus died on a Friday and rose on the following Sunday. That was close enough. In testing Jesus, the Pharisees were actually testing Almighty God. But their real fault is not to be found in their ignorance, but in their self-centeredness. This is often the case with us as well. While the 3 days meant nothing to them, we have the gift of hindsight and faith. But do we also look to Him with gratitude and love? I'm Father Vincent Serpa for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Call now with your question, 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live all day. 2 hours today we get with Trent Horn, and our topic, why are you an atheist? If you are an unbeliever, if you don't find the arguments for God's existence persuasive, and you would like to discuss what other arguments you do find persuasive, we'd love to have that conversation with you. We promise that it will be as friendly as we can possibly make it, and we would genuinely like to talk about it. 888-318-7884. Trent Horn, our guest this hour, staff apologist here at Catholic Answers, speaker and writer extraordinaire. We go now to Tony in Los Angeles, listening on Immaculate Heart Radio. Tony, why are you an atheist?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
First of all, an atheist is not someone who does not believe in God. An atheist is someone who does not believe in a personal God. There may be a God, there may be thousands of gods. The God I reject is the God who supposedly is a loving God, a God who cares, a God who intervenes. All we have to do is look at things like the Holocaust, slavery, children in cancer clinics. You as a Christian believe that God could intervene, but he does not. So here's this loving God observing the Holocaust, gas chambers, slavery. I don't have to tell you what blacks went through. Children in cancer clinics. It absolutely makes no sense unless you accept the personal God, but besides loving him, blaspheme and curse him. Why would you not curse a God who allows human suffering?
That's a good question, Tony. Why does God allow suffering? You describe moral evils, humans wronging one another, and natural evils, things like cancer, disease, things like that. Let me ask you a question. You don't believe in a personal God, or at least a God who is loving or good because of these evils. If God were loving, what should he do in response to, let's take moral evils, like people robbing, stealing, raping, killing each other? What should God do in response to that?
He did in the Old Testament. Intervene with all the bad people.
Wait. Are there,
and this way,
Tony, are there people who never do a single bad thing? Don't we all do even minor bad things at some points?
Wait, you're playing the wrong game with me. Let me tell you the right game. The game is that your God, your loving God, by definition, allows human suffering. That's
Right.
what you believe. So don't try to sidestep and get into these other areas. This is the unanswerable question because it makes no sense. And
Tony,
you know it. You're
Tony,
too
I
intelligent.
am answering the question, Tony. I'm answering it, and you're saying God allows evil, and that's why you don't believe in him. So I want to know from you, what should God do so that you would believe in him? Because it seems to me to get rid of all the moral evils, wouldn't he have to make us robots without free will? Or just permanent, anytime we do anything to hurt one another, even tell a lie, God zoops in and shuts our little mouths so we don't tell a lie? Should God do that for every single bad thing that we do?
You're talking to the wrong guy. Not the every little bad thing. The Hitlers, the Holocaust, the children in
where do
cancer
you?
clinics,
So
right?
where? I want to know where you draw the line. Should God stop drunk people from driving in cars?
Are you thinking? Are you still with us?
I'm here.
Okay, Tony.
So what do you think about that example? Should God, if you're drunk, he swoops in and keeps you from you can't find your keys so that no one gets run over by a car, like children?
No, the serious people, the Hitlers, just open up the
Why not?
and
Why
see what
shouldn't
he has
God?
allowed. You would not allow it if you saw a child in the street being abused. You would not allow it. You will go out and do something. It's not up to us. This is the point you're missing. It's not up to us to understand God. It's the point you're missing.
But Tony, it sounds like you understand that he was wrong about allowing things like the Holocaust. So it sounds like you understand what God should or shouldn't do.
If there is a personal God, not just I, anyone, not just I, anyone would say he should have intervened and he should intervene.
All right, my last question. Why should he intervene? Is it a fact that he ought to rid evil from the world?
You bet.
Okay, can you prove that fact?
It's not up to me to do that. I observe the universe. I observe human suffering. It's you Christians who believe that God allows it because you believe that if he wanted, he could intervene.
Yeah, but
You're
Tony, you're
asking why I'm
saying...
atheist. That's why atheists are atheists.
Okay, all right. I think we're probably going to have to move on at this point, but I think we've got to the root here, and I think this is very instructive about what happens when the subject of evil and suffering comes up. And I agree that it's very emotional to see terrible things happen in the world. But notice something interesting with our discussion up to this point. It's okay for God to allow certain kinds of evil, small things, telling a lie, maybe even drunk driving. We never got a clear answer on that. But he should definitely stop Hitler and really, really bad things. So it seems to me that Tony and other atheists understand God could have good reasons for allowing quote-unquote minor evils, but it's the major ones he should step in for. Now, I would come at it as a Christian. I'd look at it this way. If God is all-powerful, and I see reasons for the minor evils, what about the major ones? Well, I can't see the reasons why God would allow really bad things to happen. I can see reasons for the minor, but not the major. But if God is all-powerful, then I should give him the benefit of the doubt that he has reasons that I, as a fallible, finite human being, cannot see. And when the Holocaust comes up, as it often does when we talk about the problem of evil, Hitler was not one person who just pressed a button one day and killed 6 million Jews and millions of other people. The Holocaust happened because of centuries of small evils, lies, slander, calumny towards Jewish people and others, building and building, hatred, greed, avarice, building on top of one another until you get the Holocaust. That gigantic evils we see in the world usually don't just come out of the blue. Moral evils, I would say. Mm-hmm. They are small moral evils that build and build and build. So we see that if we want a world free of moral evil, God would have to take away our free will. He would have to take away so many good things. But maybe God can allow evil so he can bring more good from it. Goods like love, courage, compassion, free will. And that's part of the mystery of how an all-loving, all-powerful God can bring good from the evil that we see. And so I think evil can point us to God in that respect.
Is it fair to say then that God does, in fact, set a limit on evil? I mean, he doesn't let the Holocaust go on forever. Not even a human life can go on forever. But it's just not the limit that we set. That he doesn't set the limit where we would, or in the way we would.
Well, it's interesting. We say, well, why doesn't God intervene? It's an interesting question because we might say, well, perhaps there are other terrible evils. Maybe someone was going to wipe out the entire human race, and God providentially intervened to stop that, and we've never heard about it because it never happened. We don't know. We only know the evils that did happen, we're aware of, and we say, well, why would God do something like that? And for me, I would say I might not know the answer to particular evils, why this particular bad thing happened, every single reason for it. But I know general reasons why God allows there to be evil in the world, because he created man. He wants us to have certain goods, living in a physical world, being embodied, having free will. And with those goods, there are parasitic evils that are attached to that. And so God, though, redeems the world by by scouring and purging evil from it, even until the very last day, and brings this eternal weight of glory to us and reckons all things at the end of the world.
Fair enough. Tony, thank you for that call. We can say we share with you that we don't know the reasons, but we do trust that God has reasons. We'll be right back with more Trent Horn, Why Are You an Atheist? On Catholic Answers Live.
Got questions? Visit us today at Catholic.com.
Anna Mitchell.
I had this formative experience during one Sunday Mass in the Easter season in 7th grade. During the Gloria, I remember having this sense of being filled. If you can imagine what it must feel like to be a cup being filled with water, that's how it felt. It started at my feet and it moved up my body. And I've come to believe that that was the Holy Spirit. And I can really trace my zeal for the faith back to that moment.
The Sunrise Morning Show, Monday through Friday at 6 a.m. Eastern on EWTN Radio.
As legend tells it, 500 years ago, a disaffected Augustinian priest nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg Cathedral. The evidence that he actually did this is pretty thin, but Martin Luther's objections to Catholic teachings concerning purgatory and indulgences set off a series of countless ruptures that the Church suffers to this very day. The faithful Catholic wants to be God's instrument in healing these ruptures, but may not know where to begin. Join us this September 28th to 30th as we tackle the topic at Catholic Answers 4th National Apologetics Conference, the reunion of all Christians, a lively and inspiring conference designed to ignite and inform your faith. We've got an all-star lineup of speakers guaranteed to fire you up. Catholic historian Steve Weidenkopf, apologist Mark Brumley, apologist Devin Rose, plus all of your favorite Catholic Answers apologists. This is an event you don't want to miss. This is where it all begins. Join us this September for a conference that is sure to leave you wanting more. Seats are still available, but they're going fast. Visit CatholicAnswersConference.com or call 1-888-291-8000 today to register. That's CatholicAnswersConference.com.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Our summer series continues tomorrow. I'll be over at Ascension Parish here in Tierra Santa section of San Diego. If you want to come by at 7 p.m., my talk is called 5 Great Deceptions We Face Today. And if you can't be there live, this is one of the ones that we're streaming via Facebook. So you can go to our Facebook page and get the stream of it there. I got a haircut for this, so that's another enticement there. Because if you want to see it, just a really a beautiful, beautiful haircut. Our guest this hour, Trent Horn, has written a full book and many places in articles and in parts of other books has dealt with the question of atheism. We invite our atheist friends, we hope you are our friends, to give us a call today. We'd like to discuss why you are an atheist, why the arguments and the evidences that are given for the existence of God do not convince you. 888-318-7884, the number, 888-318-7884. That's what we call Jerry Speed right there. I was giving the number at Jerry Usher Speed. Paul, in Billings, Montana, you are on with Trent Horn. Why are you an atheist?
Well, I was born and raised a Catholic, so I started out and went to 12 years of Catholic education. So I started life basically accepting Catholicism, Christianity and Catholicism in particular. And I started reading, started taking some science classes, and slowly started to realize that there is no real reason to have a God. Everything in reality in our existence is easily explained by science. And when I say science, I mean by observing existence, reality, whatever you want to look at, the cosmos, biology, and it's all pretty easily understood without needing a God. So that's how I got there.
Okay, Paul, what is science, or what is the goal of science as a subject?
Observing reality and making hypothesis from what you observe, coming up with experiments to prove or disprove your observation, and performing the experiment and seeing what results you get, and then building on that. If you get a positive result, then you've got some evidence for something or other, and then you build on that.
Okay, so science answers some questions we have about the world. It answers some questions by providing natural explanations for things we observe. I agree with that. But are there some questions that science cannot answer?
Not that I can think of. I'm
Okay,
sure you have some. So
yeah, sure. I have many. One would be: is there a scientific experiment you perform that answers the question, "What is science?"
I think there probably could be. I don't know. That sounds more philosophical to me than scientific, but I think you could do that.
Does philosophy, or so does philosophy answer questions that are different from what science answers? Or here's another one: is there a scientific experiment you can? Okay, because here's another one: is there a scientific experiment you can perform that answers the question, "Is science important?"
Yeah, I think there is. I think
which experiment? Which experiment would that be?
Well, you could look at the sum total of the technology that we have benefited as hominids from all of the science that's accumulated knowledge of everything, and you could surmise that we are better off.
Wait, surmise
versus.
Where do you do what scientific? That sounds more like an assumption or a value judgment than a scientific conclusion.
Well, you're a smart guy, and you're well-read and well-educated. You know that in science, you gather evidence. You don't use the words like proof or absolutes. You say things like surmise, and that's a scientific way of speaking. It doesn't mean that you're not pretty sure, but you don't say as opposed, and this is a reason I'm not religious, is that when you open the Bible and if you read a certain passage, and if you feel pretty confident that you understand what that says, and then you're listening to the Word of God. You're listening to an absolute. Science is not absolute. Science is the gathering of evidence, and when the evidence proves that something is beneficial or harmful or works a certain way or doesn't work a certain way, you have evidence, and that's all you have. You don't have proof.
Can you have evidence for God?
Well, I don't think so. That would be my point.
Wait. Is it possible for there to be evidence of God?
I don't see how. Because you would be talking about something that would live outside of physics, the known laws of physics, biology, defying the laws of gravity, things like that. So if you could prove that, if you could scientifically prove that somebody floated from Earth up into the sky, that would be awesome. But can you prove that?
But you're talking, I think you're referring to the ascension of Jesus recorded in Scripture. And that's not a scientific truth, it's a historical truth. You can't scientifically prove that, whether Jesus ascended into the sky, as the Gospels record, you would have to say, well, is the Gospel reliable? What probability do we give that? Just the same as if you read an ancient document that says that Julius Caesar crossed the Rubicon River, that's not science, you're doing a historical investigation there, right? Or it's a kind of science.
Well, no, Caesar didn't need supernatural means to cross the river. So whether he did or didn't,
so it sounds like you're already assuming that the only things that are real are quote unquote natural things or things that are not related to God. It sounds like you're making an assumption that there is the universe, God is not involved with it in any way, shape, or form, and that's just what's present there. Because it seems to me if we can't get on the train, Paul, if you say, well, there couldn't even be evidence for God, because we should talk what's the hypothetical, at least, that if God existed, if we define God as the creator of the universe, wouldn't an evidence for a creator be the fact that the universe is not self-explained or the universe requires an explanation? Would that at least be possible evidence for God?
Well, cosmology is a difficult subject, and I don't pretend to have any expertise in that world, but there is the theory of the Big Bang, and there is quantum fields and things like that. And again, I am not speaking as an expert, but I know that there is physical reasons that the universe came into existence theoretically. And yes, you can question them, and there's conflicting evidence and there's conflicting theories. But if you went to church on Sunday and the priest levitated above the altar for 5 minutes or seconds or any period of time, and it was observed and filmed and everything, and it wasn't
that would convince
a
you.
magician doing a trick.
Would that convince you?
No, but it would be great evidence.
Okay, so it would be evidence. Why would it be? It sounds like that would be evidence to you because that's not naturally possible.
Yes, it's very simple. My disbelief, my inability to believe in God is very simple. There's no proof.
How you're saying there's no proof, but where is the evidence for the claim there is no proof? Because I would argue for proof. I would say that just as it is naturally impossible for a person to defy the law of gravity, it is naturally impossible for something like a universe to come from absolute nothing. That if a priest violated the law of gravity and that was evidence for God, then if we have a law of metaphysics or a law of reality, like something cannot come from nothing, and we do observe that if the Big Bang Theory is true and the universe came from nothing, that would at least be evidence for God, because we have a law of reality seemingly being broken, would we not?
Well, no, because are you familiar with Lawrence Krauss and
Yes.
his work?
Yes.
Okay, so he wrote a book, Universe from Nothing, and he gives his, or I should say, cosmologists' present theory for how a universe could come from, and it's not nothing. The universe didn't come from nothing. It came from something. However explainable it is again, it's not something I feel confident that I should be lecturing on, because I'm not a cosmologist.
Well,
but
Paul, before we have to go to our next break, let me ask you another hypothetical, because I respond to Krauss in my book, Answering Atheism, and he does a bait and switch. He tries to say a universe from nothing, and he redefines nothing to be a quantum field, which is something. So now that begs the question, did this quantum field exist forever? And there's good reasons, scientifically and philosophically, to say that no, it has not existed forever. Even that reality came from absolute nothing. So my last question to you would be this. If there were evidence the whole universe came from absolute nothing, no pre-existing matter or energy, would you see that at least as being evidence for a creative power or force like God beyond the natural world?
Well, yeah, it's not a great question. I wish I had a better one, because yes, I think Krauss did a little bit of a bait and switch, and he talks about nothing and then quantum fields. But so our
well, Paul, let's go back to my hypothetical before we have to depart. If we did see, yes, the universe came from absolute nothing, so there's no physical explanation for the universe, would you be open to an explanation beyond space-time, matter, and energy, or a supernatural one?
That's just not a great question. I'm sorry, I can't answer that question, because that's a hypothetical. I am just saying that nothing that I have seen or read about or observed in my daily life gives me any inkling that there's anything that breaks the laws of physics. And so it's a no-brainer to me to say that this universe exists without the need for a creator.
Okay, all right. Well, I think we're going to have to move on here, but I think that this is a very interesting exchange that I hear atheists always tell me I should be open-minded, I should be a free thinker. But I found it very interesting in our conversation. I'm just asking the question, if, and it's not an insane hypothetical, it's an understandable one, all of physical reality had a beginning from absolute nothing, from no physical state, wouldn't we ask, well, why did that happen? And I'm not saying, would you believe in God if that were shown to be the case? I'm saying, would you be open to that being evidence for God? Maybe not conclusive, but at least evidence. And to have the immediate resistance to that, it's easy to say, oh, I believe in a levitating priest because I can't find a good example of that. But when we have something we have good evidence for, like the beginning of the universe from nothing, suddenly there's a strange resistance to that even possibly being evidence for God. And I think I would challenge our atheistic friends, do you look at the evidence with possibly a resistance to God existing? Are you like Thomas Nagel, the famous atheistic, or at least non-religious scientist who said, I don't want there to be a God? If so, try being open-minded, maybe. Something to think about.
We'll leave it there, and we've got lots of folks want to challenge you, Trent, or at least share why they themselves are atheists when we come back right after this on Why Are You an Atheist? Day at Catholic Answers Live. We'll be right back.
Why are you an atheist? Call now. Trent is waiting to talk to you.
Time is running out to help Catholic Answers' annual summer campaign. It's a crucial time because we need to offset the drop in donations that occurs every summer. We're making progress toward our goal, but we still need you to help. Souls are on the line, and your help lets us reach millions of people every year. Catholic Answers publishes books, booklets, CDs, and digital content, bringing you the best in Catholic apologetics and evangelization. Our flagship publication, Catholic Answers Magazine, is the leading journal of Catholic apologetics. Catholic Answers speakers reach tens of thousands of people every year. Every single month, more than 1 million people visit Catholic Answers website, Catholic.com. We also encourage people across the country and around the world through online social media, including Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and other online platforms. We maintain a staff of full-time apologists to answer questions by phone and email from people who need personalized help. Catholic Answers Live features prominent leaders in the church and answers listeners' questions on every aspect of church life. It's available to you by radio, online, and now it's seen on EWTN television. If you care about your Catholic faith and want to see it grow, please help Catholic Answers continue this vital work. To hear how you can help Catholic Answers, visit Catholic.com and click the 2017 Summer Campaign banner. That's the 2017 Summer Campaign banner at Catholic.com.
Pope Francis said, "The key that opens the door to faith is prayer." Join St. Paul Street Evangelization by running a prayer station in the public square. You don't need to be a professional apologist or theologian. Just listen to the needs of the people you encounter. Offer encouragement, take prayer requests, and pray with people. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
Homeschool Connections has recently formed a partnership featuring a dual enrollment program with Franciscan University of Steubenville. Our website is homeschoolconnections.com. We are a proud sponsor of Catholic Answers Live.
Call now with your question, 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Why are you an atheist is our question this hour. We're very grateful for all of our callers, many still waiting. And there, I see, one line open, 888-318-7884. If you would like to speak with Trent Horn about why you are not convinced that there is a God, 888-318-7884 is the number. I wonder if a trip to the Holy Land might deepen your faith that there is a God. What do you think, Trent?
It might. I think that...
Do you know of any?
God. I certainly do. I think if you think God is out there, and many people believe that, it's important to know God did come down here, so to speak. He became a person, he is a person, became incarnate, became man in the person of Jesus Christ to redeem the world from its sins. And this happened in history, in verifiable history, that Jesus is a verifiable member of the historical record. And we can ask, is he a liar, a lunatic, or the Lord he proclaimed himself to be. And I think it's wonderful for Catholics to actually go to the Holy Land so their faith isn't just kind of ethereal. It becomes very real to walk where Jesus walked. That's why I'm really happy to offer next Easter a pilgrimage to the Holy Land. I'll be leading. The website is holyland2018.com. And it's from March 23rd through April 3rd. We're going to visit Nazareth, Galilee, Bethlehem, and we'll be spending Easter in Jerusalem, celebrating Good Friday at the Stations of the Cross where Jesus walked, in the tomb where Jesus was buried and rose from the dead. It'll be a wonderful experience, and so I hope those who are listening can sign up. Sign-ups are going to come to an end relatively soon, so if you'd like to get in on that, please check out the website holyland2018.com, and I hope to see you there.
That's so cool, though. Easter in Jerusalem?
Yep.
That's really cool.
There are going to be a lot of pilgrims there. It'll be a little packed, but it's going to be an unforgettable experience.
Right indeed. All right, back to callers we go. Folks have been waiting. We go now to Stephen in New Jersey, watching on YouTube. Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Stephen, what's your... Oh, I was going to say what's your question, but my question for you is, why are you an atheist, Stephen?
Well, I guess I'd say I'm more of agnostic. I mean, like, I still go to church, and I still, but I was kind of wondering, like, why would, I understand, like, that you need God to kind of create the universe because you can't get something from nothing, but, if God did that, then why would he care about us? There's such a big universe, and it's kind of like, why are we important? I guess
Sure.
is my question.
That's a good question.
Like, why would God care about us, I guess?
Yeah. Let me offer you an analogy, Stephen, that I think can show that why that is. Imagine, a family, went off in space, kind of like that old TV show Lost in Space. Danger, Will Robinson, danger. So they go off and they explore through a wormhole and they find an alien planet, a huge planet that's never been discovered before, and the father sends his children down to explore and colonize the planet. And what if we asked, and they're down there and they meet other intelligent life forms there, other aliens that they can talk to. And the aliens say, well, we were brought here, our father brought us here, and we're exploring this world. And they say, oh, where is he? Well, he's up in our orbiting spaceship. Well, how can there be this person you speak of up there? Why would he care about 3 little puny life forms like you in this massive world we live on? Like, if you think about how big this world is, why would he care about you 3 little insignificant specks on it? And I think their answer would be pretty clear. He's our father. He created us, he loves us, and he brought us here. So I think if you look at the same way that if God is omnipotent, creates a magnificent, huge universe in his all-powerful nature, nothing keeps him from loving the human beings he created to know and worship and love him in return. So I guess that might be the way I kind of look at it. What do you think of that example?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that makes sense. Like, if God makes everything, then why wouldn't he like it? If he didn't like it, why would he make it?
That's right. And why wouldn't he make? Because then there's different kinds of things he can create: animals, stars, oceans, neutrinos, subatomic particles. And they all differ in different physical characteristics, but I think we would say that one aspect of the universe, the universe is so broad, huge, gigantic, but as far as we know, there is only one thing in the universe capable of understanding the question, why does any of this matter? And so in this giant universe, there becomes an important focal point, the human beings who are observing it. And then that leads to the question that why is this part of the universe different in the fact that humans aren't just molecular machines? We can reason, think, love, care, be courageous, sacrifice, and we understand right, wrong, goodness, and beauty and truth, that there must be something about us that makes us different than the rest of the physical world. And I would say what makes us different is that we were created and we have an immaterial soul. We have an image of that divine creator who is truth, goodness, and beauty, who made us, and so we're like him in those respects, and he wants us to be like him, to know things, to be just, right, good, and merciful. And so that's kind of the drama of salvation from the creation of the world that God has made for us. So maybe one more thought if you have from that, but that's might be how I would put it.
Yeah, no, I guess that makes sense. But then I guess that he would care about us, but why would there be certain things like commandments? Why would he care? Don't like don't steal things? Like, why would it be so like specific things like not to do? You know?
Sure. Well, I would say, to go back to the analogy of my Lost in Space family, if the father loves his children, sends them to this planet. Now, please, that's just an analogy. We don't believe, as some certain religious believers do, that God is a literal man in the sky or on another planet. We don't believe that. God is all-powerful, it doesn't have a body, exists beyond space and time. But to go to the analogy, the father who takes his kids to this other planet, these 3 little specks down there on the planet, he might tell them, go explore, rejoice in this natural wonder of this planet, but remember, don't, your air regulator, monitor this, don't step on this plant, it'll eat through your suit. Why does he give these specific rules? Well, in each one, it's because he's guarding his children against things that would hurt them. And so what we as Catholics believe is that God both writes on our hearts what we should do morally. That's why even non-religious people have a conscience. They deep down know what's right and wrong. And also, just to make it really clear to us, he might give us commandments that he reveals himself to people and says, just in case if you don't listen to your conscience, here's the commandment: don't steal, don't murder, don't commit adultery, because life and marriage and sexuality are good things, and if you misuse these good things, you're going to be in a world of hurt, and as the God who loves you, I don't want that for you. So they're not rules that are arbitrary, they're rules corresponding to our nature, so we can flourish as being created in God's image, to come to love him and love other beings created in his image and love the universe he's created it all. So good questions, and if you have any other ones, feel free to call back at another time. We're very grateful you called.
Thank you, Stephen. We go now to Rob in North Carolina, driving toward Virginia. Rob, you are on with Trent Horn. Why are you an atheist?
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Yes.
Okay. To answer that question, I doubt I can articulate it with any good sense in 1 to 2 minutes, but I'd say that the short answer is whether or not you call me an atheist or an agnostic or some other label, the fact is I don't feel it's necessary to believe in a God. There may be one, and I'm happy to acknowledge that there is some possibility there's something far greater than us, at least something greater than me, and maybe something spun this into motion, this whole creation that we're familiar with as reality. Mm-hmm. But I'd say that the short answer is maybe took me about 35 years of being a Christian and observing and being a fairly devout Christian. But I realized after watching and experiencing humanity on many levels across the globe, locally and beyond, and coming to understand humans and human suffering and, what divides us, what joins us, I really simply came to realize that believing in a God was not going to necessarily provide me with a good life. It wasn't going to make me a good person.
Rob, we're getting so close to the end now. Did you want to form that into something specific?
Okay,
sure.
Sure. Okay. Well, I'll give you the short answer. I would be just depressed beyond belief if I had to spend eternity with many of these godly people.
Okay. Well, I wish we had more time. I always do. I would say that, Rob, I agree with you. And in fact, read the letter of James in the Bible. Mere belief in God, you're correct, is not enough to make us a good person. Even the demons believe in God and they tremble. James talks about people who hear God's law and forget it, like a person who looks in a mirror and then forgets his own reflection. So I would say mere belief is not enough. But mere belief propels us, it dispenses us towards union with God, to become like God, so we can be not those phony godly believers you want nothing to do with, but true godly believers who love others as God does. And that, I think, does make all the difference in the world. So read the letter of James and call back and listen more. We'd love to engage more in another show.
Thanks very much, Rob. And if you're on the line, stay on the line. We've got a whole hour more of Why Are You an Atheist right after this.
Welcome to Catholic Answers Live, the program where you participate with your questions about apologetics and evangelization, including the most important theological, spiritual, moral, and social issues facing the world today. Call now with your question for today's guest. Toll free 1-888-31-TRUTH. That's 888-318-7884. Now, from San Diego, Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back. Second hour of Catholic Answers Live. We have just a fantastic couple of hours today. Both hours devoted to this question: why are you an atheist? Our guest, Trent Horn, author of many things, including Answering Atheism and his most recent book, Why We Are Catholic. I am Cy Kellett, your host. This is Catholic Answers, and with lots of callers calling, I think we will go straight to calls. Trent, how do you feel about that?
Sure.
888-318-7884 is that number. If you would like to get in, maybe share with us why you do not believe in God. 888-318-7884. We go now to Evan in Indianapolis, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Why are you an atheist, Evan?
Hey, how are you doing today?
Good, thank you.
Yeah, so as I mentioned to the call screener, I think the first real step in me losing my Christianity was examining the Bible, and specifically learning about the idea of Markan priority.
The idea of what? Markan priority?
Yes.
Is that what you said? Oh, okay. Well, now I'm really curious. Markan priority is the hypothesis that the Gospel of Mark was written first, and the Gospels of Matthew, Luke, and then later John were written after that, and that Matthew and Luke used Mark as one of their source materials in their Gospels. How do you get from Markan priority to not believing in God at all? Seems like kind of a leap.
Well, it was a progression from there. Like I said, that was just kind of the first domino.
What's wrong with Markan priority if it turned out Mark wrote first?
So Mark's gospel it doesn't seem like Jesus is God in it, to be honest. The miracles he does are much less impressive. He doesn't make any claim to be God, and it ends without a resurrection and doesn't begin with a virgin birth.
Well, I would disagree actually with a lot of that. First, I would say that at the end of Mark's gospel, even in the traditional ending, which are the last 8 verses that the others were in later manuscripts, there is a resurrection. The young man tells the women who come to the tomb, go to Galilee as Jesus said that he would. So we don't meet the resurrected Jesus, but he's certainly no longer in his tomb. There is a resurrection. You're correct, there's no virgin birth, but there's continual references to the pre-existence of Jesus. I've come into the world, that Jesus is the Son of God, that the beginning of Mark almost seems cosmic, like John's gospel. And there are other places where Jesus, for example, in Mark 2:5, he forgives sins, which is something only God can do. I agree with you that Christology is lower, where the claims to divinity are more implicit. But there are actually a lot of scholars who've done work on the Christology in those earlier Gospels. So I guess, and we don't have to get into a debate about this, but it seems to me your concern is that the story of Jesus is just kind of a legend that grew over time. Mark starts with a human Jesus, and then we get more of a divine Jesus in John. Is that your concern?
That's part of it, especially when I found other historical documents referring to, pagan cities where they talk about a war that had happened, and just 20 years later, the historians are talking about how suits of armor came to life to defend the temple, and, trees grew up that were burned, grew up from the ground after a week, and things like that, that even 20 years later became so embellished by people who were calling themselves historians.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm familiar with some of those accounts. I think some of them occur in Herodotus, for example. I don't know if they're necessarily just a few decades apart, but I would say just because there are cases where there are false stories of the supernatural or not good corroborating evidence for it, that doesn't mean that we don't have good evidence. And I think, for example, the evidence for Jesus' resurrection is very different from, let's say, a miracle count in Herodotus. For the resurrection, we have multiple sources. We have Paul's account talking about Jesus appearing to him, and Paul confirming what we read in the Gospels, like in 1 Corinthians 15, about Jesus rising from the dead and appearing to multiple people who followed him in his own life. And we know these people are real and had a connection to at least the earthly Jesus, people like Peter, James, Paul, because we have those definite writings, unlike what we might have in other pagan sources. I also would like to offer this thought about the legend theory. Jesus starts in Mark human, in John becomes divine. A problem I have with that is that doesn't explain that if we read in Paul, who wrote 20 years before Mark, we get a very divine Jesus. We don't hear very much at all about Jesus's miracles, for example, in his earthly ministry, which we would expect if that was much later than Paul. Do you see how that might be a problem with the theory?
Well, given that it was still quite some time after the events, it's not that big of a jump for the legend to grow, and especially since not all of it seems to have made its way to Paul, such as, again, the virgin birth.
Well, Paul says that Christ was born of a woman, born under the law. He doesn't say a virgin per se, but he also doesn't talk about Jesus having strictly biological parents, for example. Also, the letter of the Hebrews compares Jesus to Melchizedek as someone who had neither mother nor father. So I think that while legends can grow in different environments, the multiple sources we have in the New Testament mitigate against that. And I'd also, I guess for me, well, we still have a few minutes before we have to go to a break. I would wonder then, how does this get started then? At the very beginning, we have Paul, we have Peter's writings, John, the other apostles, and we have Jesus, who teaches, is crucified. How do you get from that failed Messiah to people preaching he rose from the dead and willing to die for that belief? How do you get to that? Because if you say a legend, that doesn't work if you have people who personally did know Jesus prior to the crucifixion. So how do you get to then the risen, deified Jesus?
So how familiar are you with cargo cults?
Oh yes, the people who in the East Asian islanders who they're similar, I think, to the John Frum cult, who kind of is that what you're referring to? Yeah. Well, I think that's very different. The timeline is very different. Okay, well, I believe that with John Frum, what happened is there was a John from, and we're getting into some esoteric history here for our listeners, so do bear with. I believe would have been like a British national or explorer, or says, I'm John from England, or I'm John from America, or something like that, and then becomes John Frum. There's just the name, and then there's miraculous stories added later. I've looked into the cargo cults, and once again, I think you have many, many decades of people who are removed from the original sources, and so it's not similar to the gospel accounts, and especially the Pauline epistles. So I'm curious as to who you seem very interested in New Testament scholarship, at least, Evan. I'm curious who you read in this regard. Some of these arguments seem very similar to Richard Carrier, who is a guy who I debated a few years ago. I don't know if are you familiar with him, or are there other scholars you've read into?
I've heard of him. I think my starting point was Bart Ehrman, which led me to looking at Wikipedia, and then from there the sources cited in Wikipedia.
I see. Well, I would recommend just checking out some other scholars on these different questions. That New Testament scholars have different opinions about Markan priority, about who wrote first, or when, or what the relationship is, how Jesus is portrayed in the Gospels. When it comes to Bart Ehrman, there's a good anthology that came out, because I know Ehrman wrote a book called How Jesus Became God. And so, and that's his natural explanation for, the origins of the Christian faith. There's a response book by a group of Christian, or at least religious, New Testament scholars called How God Became Jesus. So Ehrman wrote the book, How Jesus Became God, and I have a review of that on the Catholic Answers website. Definitely check out How God Became Jesus. That's a response to Ehrman's work and some of those things you cited in Wikipedia. And especially like Craig Evans' entry in there is just awesome on the empty tomb of Jesus and the resurrection. So check that out, and then also Brant Petry's book, The Case for Jesus, and that will maybe provide a counterpoint to some of the more radical, critical elements in New Testament scholarship that you've been reading. So How God Became Jesus and The Case for Jesus by Brant Petry, I would highly recommend. And thanks for calling and bringing up such good questions.
Got to go to a break. Evan, we appreciate the call. We've got callers on the line, but there are 3 lines open, 888-318-7884. If you would like to share with us why you are an atheist, Trent Horn, happy to engage in conversation with you. 888-318-7884. We'll be back in just a minute with more on Catholic Answers Live.
Why are you an atheist? Call now. Trent is waiting to talk to you.
As legend goes, it was 500 years ago that Martin Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg Cathedral, setting of a series of ruptures that the Church suffers to this very day. Catholic Answers magazine is marking the anniversary with our very special issue delving deep into the Protestant Reformation. Want to be sure to get your copy? Subscribe right now to the best Catholic apologetics magazine anywhere by calling 818-487-2011 or going to Catholic.com. The heroes of the Counter-Reformation, the deadly errors of sola fide, and everything you want to know about how the Reformation played out. Just a few of the articles you can look forward to. Don't wait another moment to subscribe. Call 818-487-2011 or go to the shop at Catholic.com right now to get subscriptions for yourself and those you love. Share the faith. Defend the faith. Catholic Answers magazine from Catholic Answers, the most trusted name in Catholic apologetics.
Not so long ago, atheistic ideology was something that was spoken of only in private conversation or halls of higher learning. But not any longer. From bumper stickers to billboards to bestsellers, atheism has raised its voice and taken its place in our culture. In Answering Atheism, Trent Horn offers a fresh and useful resource for the God debate, combining a thorough refutation of atheist claims with a skillfully constructed case for theism based on reason and common sense. Meticulously researched and street-tested, Answering Atheism offers a charitable approach that respects atheists' sincerity and goodwill, making this book suitable not just for believers, but for skeptics and seekers too. Order Answering Atheism today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Also available in e-book format.
Call now with your question, 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Trent Horn, our guest, the author, maybe most appropriately for today of many books, but of Answering Atheism. Today we're questioning atheism. Why are you an atheist? 888-318-7884. The number. Mark in Bakersfield, California, listening on 1050 AM. Why are you an atheist?
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I've always, I never grew up religious. It never seemed like anything added up. More so than anything, I feel like there's so much wonder in this world that people automatically dismiss as, oh, well, God made it, or God did this, instead of, answering how did this become and really digging into the physics and the science of it. But more to my specific question is, if there is a God, and he's all-powerful, all-knowing, how does he allow all these horrific things to happen to you? Children starving all over the world, people dying in wars in the name of God. How do you reconcile that?
Sure. Well, it's a good question. I'd like to answer, though, something you alluded to, that if there are religious people who stifle discussion about the natural world, like, well, what is this amazing thing we see in the natural world? Well, God made it, so you don't have to worry about it. I don't know really any religious people who have that mindset. To me, the fact that God created the world makes it exciting to want to explore. Because I know if God created the world, it's orderly. There are logical explanations for things. Everything works together into a single whole. There aren't just unexplained, well, that just happens because it happens. There are these natural, regular laws built into the whole system for me to try to figure out. If there weren't, I'd be frustrated. It'd be like if you went to a puzzle factory and someone gives you the newest puzzle. It's like, cool, I want to put this together because I know there is a solution. But if the world were just some strange accident, trying to explore it might be like trying to assemble a puzzle that came out of an exploding puzzle factory, and the pieces are charred and some are missing, and you don't have a guarantee they even fit together at all. So I would say that in paragraph 283 of the Catechism, which is the Church's official teaching manual, it says we should have wonder for the created world and of scientific enterprises. So like, for example, if you see the pyramids, you say, well, these are amazing. Some ancient people made them. Yeah, that's true, but how did they make it? What process went through? So knowing there is a creator of something does not preclude that you want to be interested in the processes or how it came about. Just as like if God created the world, we want to know, well, how did that process unveil, essentially? So I want to just touch on that because I hate when I hear people with that kind of attitude. Second, Mark, your other question is, well, if God exists and he's all good and all powerful and all knowing, why is there evil and suffering? And there's a short, unsatisfying answer and a longer, less satisfying answer. Not completely satisfying. The longer one, is helpful. The short, unsatisfying one would be this. Evil and suffering exists in the world because evil is an absence of good. And so God creates the world and he allows absence of good so he can bring greater good from it. So, for example, if God creates human beings and we have free will, we can choose to freely love or care for our neighbor or to hate and hurt them. And so God tolerates the evils, the absence of good like hate or violence, so that there can be other goods like love that wouldn't be possible, for example, if we didn't have free will. I know that doesn't explain the whole thing, but that's just a start, that God can bring more good from evil if he's all powerful, and so that doesn't contradict his essentially loving nature. I would say, though, that actually our sense that evil is a way things are not supposed to be is kind of a clue there is a God, because we have a sense things should be a certain way, but if the world's an accident, there's no way the world should be, it just is. But if we believe it's a fact or a truth, you ought to do good, you ought to avoid evil. To me, that seems like something beyond science. It's like a cosmic, all-good God guiding us towards a certain end. You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Okay. So that would be my short answer to that. What do you think of it, at least setting you on thinking about the problem a little more?
No, that's definitely a good point. I mean, it just, there's a lot of things, with that suffering and that evil that are even just beyond the control of, entire groups of people, like say starvation, for example. And, they're not doing anything wrong to
not necessarily. Yeah. At least in the modern, well, like starvation. It's kind of funny. We ask the question. There's people starving all over the world. Why doesn't God do something about that? But then it's like we spend $1 billion in the United States on Halloween candy every year, and it's like we say, why doesn't God do something? Well, why don't we do something? So it's just kind of weird to me that. People want to blame God and say he has a moral duty to do something and he doesn't, and yet we get ourselves off the hook a lot of the times. We could all get together and do this. There's enough food in the world to feed everybody. The question is, are we going to distribute it so people are fed? And you're right. There's natural disasters and things that we can't always protect people from. But for me, it goes back to that main thing, which is we sense, if God were real, he'd have a moral duty to fix this world, and he doesn't, so he's probably not there. And yet, wait a minute, we have that same moral duty. And that moral duty, where does that come from? It can't come from ourselves, because we could change it if we wanted to. It's got to come from a perfect source of goodness, which would be God. And now that explains, wait a minute, I have a duty to fix things that have gone wrong, to bring about a redemption in this world. Why? Because God made the world and it's good. Things have gone wrong, and he's given us grace to make it go right. So for me, I think the problem of evil, we just can't use it as a stop to say, not think about evil anymore. It makes us think deeper about it, so that we can really confront the issue. And I think that atheism is not the answer to the problem of evil. Just saying God's there isn't the answer either, but we can't dismiss God. We say, well, there is God, there is the world, there is evil. What does God want us to do about it? And suddenly I think the big picture starts to emerge. So thanks for the question. I think that's a very good one, and I hope you'll call back if you have any other thoughts on that or other issues.
Thank you so much, Mark. The question of the hour, well, the question of the day today, why are you an atheist? Trent Horn here to have that conversation with you. We'd love to hear from you. 888-318-7884, the number. We go now to William in Denver, Colorado, listening on 1060 AM EWTN. William, why are you an atheist?
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. I am an atheist because I'm convinced by the arguments of Bertrand Russell that a positive claim requires some positive evidence and a negative claim does not.
Negative.
So,
by a negative claim, you mean a claim that something does not exist? What do you mean by that?
Yeah, you don't need evidence to claim something doesn't exist, merely the positive sense of that.
Okay, so if I were to say there was no Holocaust, I don't need evidence for that?
Well, no. In the face of evidence, you need evidence to refute that. But given that a claim is, if you take a claim with no argument around it,
sure,
you only need to claim that you only need to prove that it exists. Once you do that work, someone else needs evidence to prove you wrong.
Okay, well, when it comes to God, then you're saying there's no evidence or reason for God.
There's no evidence of his existence.
Okay.
His existence.
Why should we believe that that's true?
Why should we believe that there isn't evidence?
Yeah.
Can you? I mean, what? In what? Can you point to the evidence?
Well, no. Let's say I'm an agnostic. I listen to two people here. I've just heard about this thing they call God, okay? And there's this guy over here saying, here's this evidence for God. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. And then there's you, William, over here saying there is no evidence. So I'm new to the discussion.
Well, yeah.
So William, why should I believe that? What can you give me to convince me when you say there is no evidence? There's this guy over here who says that there is. Can you give me a little bit more on your side to convince me there's no evidence?
Yeah, so I mean, my claim is that the person who says there is evidence is misunderstanding what one should say evidence is. So for a book written, 800 many years ago does not constitute evidence for something we can't.
Well, William, let's try this. William, are there arguments for the existence of God that people debate?
Certainly.
Okay, which of those do you think is the least bad of them, and what's wrong with it?
The evidence for the arguments for God, what's the least bad? I find the most convincing evidence or most convincing argument, which I don't find convincing, but the most convincing is the one that is some idea that there must be a causal chain.
Okay.
That there has to be something to start a Big Bang.
Okay, so an argument from first cause that if the universe began to exist,
that's right.
there needs to be.
Right.
Okay, great. And what do you think fails in that argument?
Well, what I think I think you can perhaps become a deist from that point, but I just don't see the connection between that and the absolute truth of the Bible.
Oh, okay. Well, I actually agree with you, William, on that point, that arguments for a creator God, an all-powerful, eternal, necessary being, which we call God, the creator of space, time, matter, and energy, that in and of itself does not necessarily prove a certain religion is true, like Christianity. It's a stepping stone. So we'd start there and say, okay, well, so I guess there's a God out there somewhere that created the world. Did he ever reveal himself? And so for me, that's a historical question. And I always like to look at the person of Jesus. And every religion seems to have a thought about who Jesus is. And, he's usually in other religions, he's a man or a prophet. but only in Christianity is he the risen Lord. He's God incarnate. So if Christians are right, then we found the right religion. If the other religions are right about Jesus, we have to keep looking. So for me, then, it sounds like you're even open to there could be a God out there. It's just Christianity you're not sold on.
I'm open to that in a sense, but I'm doubtful that there's. I go back. I'm open to that in the same sense that I'm open to the idea there's a teapot orbiting Jupiter. It's possible, but I don't see there's anything to convince me of that.
Well, sure, anything is possible, but we would ask where the evidence points to. And I would say that unlike the teapot orbiting Jupiter, which comes from Bertrand Russell, and I write about in Answering Atheism, there is positive evidence for there can't be an infinite causal chain for the universe to show there's God, and positive evidence Jesus really did rise from the dead and vindicated his claims to divinity. Check out our website, Catholic.com, for more on that, and I hope other callers will call in, and we can keep the discussion going.
We'll be right back with more after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Catholic Answers Live.
Not so long ago, atheistic ideology was something that was spoken of only in private conversation or halls of higher learning. But not any longer. From bumper stickers to billboards to bestsellers, atheism has raised its voice and taken its place in our culture. In Answering Atheism, Trent Horn offers a fresh and useful resource for the God debate, combining a thorough refutation of atheist claims with a skillfully constructed case for theism based on reason and common sense. Meticulously researched and street-tested, Answering Atheism offers a charitable approach that respects atheists' sincerity and goodwill, making this book suitable not just for believers, but for skeptics and seekers too. Order Answering Atheism today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you. Also available in ebook format.
Hi, this is Trent Horn, and I'm here to tell you about my new book, Hard Sayings, a Catholic approach to answering Bible difficulties. Have you ever read something in the Bible that confused you? Or has a skeptic ever asked you to explain a scandalous passage and you didn't know what to say? Doesn't Genesis contradict science? Why does the Bible promote slavery? How could God order his people to kill women and children? It's happened to just about everyone. But now you have a place to turn for the answers. In Hard Sayings, I look at dozens of the most confounding passages in Scripture and offer clear, reasonable, and Catholic keys to unlocking their true meaning. After reading this book, you'll be equipped to answer the toughest questions skeptics ask about the Bible. So don't be left without an answer again. Order your copy of Hard Sayings today by calling 1-888-291-8000, by visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or by asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Now is the time to make your plans for the 2017 EWTN Family Celebration. September 9th and 10th are the dates, and Worcester, Massachusetts is the place for our celebration of 100 years of Fatima. This is your chance to meet your favorite Catholic TV and radio hosts. We'll have Holy Mass and Confession, Family Corner, and you can shop for holy reminders at EWTN Religious Catalog. For more information, go to EWTN.com/family celebration.
We're giving our listeners a chance to download a free copy of an MP3 by our own Trent Horn, our guest today, and with Patrick Madrid. And you just sign up for the Catholic Answers Live newsletter. Text the word Madrid. I don't know why we didn't do Horn. It's easier, H-O-R-N, but we did Madrid, M-A-D-R-I-D. You just type that word to the number, you text that word to the number 44222 on your cell phone. Madrid to the number 44222. Then you follow the directions that you get, and you get a free copy of the MP3, The Communion of Saints and Purgatory with Trent Horn and Patrick Madrid. That's all it takes.
I wonder if people, Cy, are going to say, oh, they do voice to text, and they try to just, say Madrid and text it to us, and then Siri comes on and says, Madrid is the capital city of the Kingdom of Spain and the largest municipality.
Is it possible that some people have a dumber Siri than other people? Because the Siri on my phone, well, admittedly, I don't have an iPhone. I feel like I've anthropomorphized her, so now I don't want to insult her.
What if your Siri like dropped out of school and so it's
just like, I think I got
Madrid,
that Siri.
And then Siri goes, I think it's a city somewhere in Ohio. I heard Jake talking about it last night. Cool, bro, gotta go.
Siri that knows nothing. I'll be like, directions to Catholic Answers. And then she'll be like, Catholic Answers are wrong. And I'll be like, what? You're my Siri. I don't know. Maybe she's just super clever and she's trying to drive me insane. All right, so
could be.
I don't know why we went off on that discursus, but are you an atheist? Do you not believe in God? Do you believe, even go so far as to say there are really no reasonable arguments for God? We'd love to talk with you today. 888-318-7884 is the number. Why are you an atheist? Trent Horn, the author of Answering Atheism, is here to discuss it with you. We go now to Kyle in Louisiana, watching on YouTube. Thanks for watching on YouTube, Kyle. Thanks for everybody who watches us on YouTube, Facebook, or Periscope. Kyle, I almost called you YouTube, Kyle. Kyle, why are you an atheist?
Yeah. I think my main question would be, since the Catholic Church helped compose a lot of the Bible and especially the New Testament, how do we know we can trust the, I guess, quote, inspiration of the Catholic Church in composing the Bible? Because if we can't trust the Catholic Church, how can we trust the Bible?
I'm not sure the question you have here. It seems you're saying, if the Catholic Church created the Bible, how can we trust it if the Church wrote into it everything it wants? Is that what you're going for here?
Kind of along those lines, as in, especially with like deciding what books go into the Bible. How do we not know that they just chose books that would support whatever their beliefs would be or agenda would be?
Well, I would say that is something that happened. We would have to say, well, what did the process of the canon, what was that? Because it sounds like you understand correctly that in the ancient world, in ancient Israel and in the early Roman Empire, there were multiple books and letters being written about Christianity, written about Jesus and about the church, and not all of them were included in the Bible. And the process of the canon developed over time, but received more of an official church endorsement in the 4th century, and then was officially recognized at the Council of Trent in the 16th century. But I would say that choosing books that correspond to what the church teaches, that's okay, because what Catholics believe is found in the written word or scripture and also in tradition. That we believe Jesus existed, he rose from the dead, he sent the apostles to go and make disciples of all nations. And so they would go and teach in many different areas. And so they would go and teach, and they would continue Jesus' teaching, and not all of it was written down. And so we have this teaching in oral and written form, and so you would compare them with one another. Does the oral contradict the written? Does the written contradict the oral? And you have that one deposit of faith or truth that's eventually codified into the Bible centuries later. So I would say that it is trustworthy. And second, we can trust that the church didn't simply alter the Bible or write into it whatever they wanted, because there are thousands of manuscripts that help us show what the original authors wrote, more so than any other ancient work by far in the ancient world. And the New Testament has better textual evidence for it than anything written by Homer or Aristotle or Plato. It's really unsurpassed. And I talk about that a little bit in my book, Hard Sayings, which is a Catholic approach to Bible difficulties, and my latest book, Why We're Catholic, in a chapter called Why We Believe in the Bible. So hopefully that's a start. Do you have any other thoughts on that? Or
No, that makes sense. I guess I don't always, especially since Protestantism is so large and they have the doctrine of sola scriptura, I don't always consider sacred tradition. So I guess being able to compare those two makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's important. And Cy, this brings up a very interesting thing that I've noticed, at least online, with the debates about atheism. I've seen this on Brandon Volk's website, Strange Notions, at least in the earlier days. And just anywhere where I see people who believe in God and those who don't, atheists and theists debating, usually the atheists are most familiar with a kind of evangelical form of Christianity. They're familiar with the writings of people like Norm Geisler, William Lane Craig, Frank Turek, Ravi Zacharias, that they only know St. Thomas Aquinas maybe as a tiny little excerpt in a philosophy book, but a lot of Catholic thinkers on these subjects never even heard of before. So if there are things in the Protestant worldview that are contradictory, like sola scriptura, the doctrine of Scripture and Revelation, or even Protestant theories about what God is like, or how God created the world, or how science and faith interact, I think it's unfortunate, Si, that sometimes atheists will see a Protestant version of Christianity and reject it without seeing, well, no, there's an alternative here. There's the Catholic metaphysics, history, philosophy that's very, very different, and I think oftentimes more sensible in answering some of these questions. And it's just unfortunate to me sometimes when those who are examining the faith only look at other versions of it instead of this traditional version.
I often find that when people think that a certain evangelical view of science, particularly of evolution, is the Christian response to science, and particularly the science of evolution, when in fact it's a small minority of Christians who respond that way, and it's not the Anglican or Orthodox or Catholic approach.
Absolutely. So, for example, saying that if you're going to be a Christian, you have to believe the earth is 6,000 years old.
Right.
That is a very new view, actually, to believe in a 6,000-year-old earth and a global flood to explain that. It wasn't until Archbishop Usher, around a little bit past the Reformation, calculated that the earth was 6,000 years old, at least what he thought. And then later in the 20th century that you had the young earth creationists with their flood geologies. Very, very new, actually. When we look, St. Augustine, for example, he believes the earth could be very, very old and that the 6 days are symbolic because 6 is a perfect number. So, so there's doctrines of creation. There's also soteriology, the doctrine of salvation. I'll meet Protestants who say, I can't believe in Christianity because apparently you can just say one prayer and you become Christian and you can never lose your salvation. That makes no sense to me.
Well, it doesn't make sense.
That doesn't make sense to me either. And in fact, I've argued against that in my written work, in a debate I had with James White. James would say that's not his position exactly. But the position that you cannot lose your salvation, that's relatively new. It was unheard of in the church prior to John Calvin. So I think it's important for us as Catholics. That's why it's great when we approach the issues of atheism, existence of God. Let's make sure to not necessarily fall in the trap of there's great apologists out there in the evangelical world. I enjoy reading, for example, a lot of what William Lane Craig writes. I don't agree with all of it, but he has a lot of great points. But let's be careful that let's not abandon some of the great things we have in our tradition and some great writers we have. Like on atheism, for example, I think Edward Feser is an excellent Catholic philosopher on this subject. We've had him on Catholic Answers Focus and on the show a bit. To look at many of these questions, going back to St. Thomas Aquinas has answered them, and we just have to be able to present them to people who may not have come across them.
888-318-7884 is our number. Lines are filling up again, and we're coming up near the end of the show. So if you'd like to talk with Trent, give us a call, 888-318-7884. We'll try to work our way through the rest of the calls when we come back after this on Catholic Answers Live.
Every question is important. Ask yours today on Catholic Answers Live.
Wouldn't it be great to have a book to give to anyone to explain exactly why Catholics believe what we believe? Why We're Catholic is the groundbreaking book by apologist Trent Horn. That one book you can give to anyone as a starting point for helping them to find their way into or back to the practice of the Catholic faith. Order your copies of Why We're Catholic today by calling 1-888-291-8000, visiting the shop at Catholic.com, or asking for it at a good Catholic bookstore near you.
Pope Francis said, "All of us are called to mature in our work as evangelizers. We want to have better training, a deepening love, and a clearer witness to the gospel. St. Paul Street Evangelization's online school of evangelization will equip you with the tools you need to be an effective evangelist. We'll ask for a pledge of financial support, but if you're unable to give, we'll set you up for free. Find out more and get involved today at streetevangelization.com. That's streetevangelization.com.
The Catholic Answers Minute. I'm Father Vincent Serpa. In Matthew 12:38, some scribes and Pharisees asked Jesus for a sign. He answered, "An evil and unfaithful generation seeks a sign, but no sign will be given it except the sign of Jonah the prophet. Just as Jonah was in the belly of the whale 3 days and 3 nights, so will the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth 3 days and 3 nights." The Jews of the time were not concerned with accuracy with time the way we are. Jesus died on a Friday and rose on the following Sunday. That was close enough. In testing Jesus, the Pharisees were actually testing Almighty God. But their real fault is not to be found in their ignorance, but in their self-centeredness. This is often the case with us as well. While the 3 days meant nothing to them, we have the gift of hindsight and faith. But do we also look to Him with gratitude and love? I'm Father Vincent Serpa for Catholic Answers, Catholic.com.
Call now with your question, 888-318-7884. This is Catholic Answers Live.
Welcome back to Catholic Answers Live. Why are you an atheist? Our topic for this hour. Our guest, Trent Horn. And Trent, you know, a caller was raising this, and I wondered if I could raise it with you about, you have this book, Answering Atheism, and the question is, well, why not answer agnosticism? And so what's the difference there, and do they require different answers?
They require different answers, but for example, in my book, Answering Atheism, I think I answer both atheists and agnostics. It's important to define the two terms, and I know there's going to be atheists who disagree with me about the meaning of these terms, but I'm pretty sure that I have them understood, or at least how they're classically understood in the history of philosophy. Basically, I put the terms this way. They go to the question, does God exist? And you can answer that in 3 ways. Yes, no, or I don't know. If you say yes, you're a theist. If you say no, God does not exist, or there is no God, classically that's what an atheist is. If you say I don't know if God exists, or maybe God exists, then you would be an agnostic. So for like with my book Answering Atheism, the first part of the book tackles the people who would say, here's a reason to think God does not exist. That would be atheists. The second half of Answering Atheism is for agnostics who say, fine, maybe there is a God, but I've seen no evidence for God. So the second half of Answering Atheism, I put forward arguments for God. So for a classical atheist, you would have to answer his arguments against God. For a classical agnostic, you'd give him reasons to believe in God. Nowadays, I think a lot of atheists try to define atheism in terms of belief. Atheists just don't believe in God. Well, agnostics don't believe in God either. So the difference is what they'll say is, well, atheism is about belief and agnosticism is about knowledge. Agnosis, without knowledge. I'm an atheist, I don't lack a belief in God, but I'm not saying that I know that there is no God. But that's just not what the terms refer to. Agnosticism is suspending judgment. You're just saying maybe there's a God, I don't know. So they say that you could be, and I've heard these terms before, agnostic atheist and Gnostic atheist. That an agnostic atheist lacks belief but doesn't have knowledge that there is no God, whereas a Gnostic atheist lacks belief, and yet a Gnostic one lacks belief and he knows there is no God. I know it's confusing, but for me, these definitions, when I hear atheists put them forward, they confuse the difference between knowledge and belief. Knowledge and belief are not just two separate things. Belief is inside of knowledge. So sorry, I put this in front of my microphone, but for our friends looking on Facebook, I've made a visual aid with my hands. If you can imagine, belief is a circle, knowledge is a wider circle. So knowledge is just justified true belief. It's a basic definition. So you'd say you know something means it's a belief that's true and you have a good reason to think it's true. A belief is just a mental state in your mind. So an agnostic atheist to me sounds like someone who has a mental state about God, but no good reasons for that mental state. I don't want to be an agnostic atheist. If you're an atheist who says there's no good reason to believe in God, Where are your reasons that there are no good reasons? What's wrong with the arguments for God? Let's talk about that. If you just say there are no good reasons, well, that's just an assertion. And as Christopher Hitchens, the late atheist, once said, that which is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. So someone who just says there's no good evidence for God, if that's all he says, that can be dismissed. He has to give me a reason to think that that's the case.
That was like jujitsu. That was like Christopher Hitchens' jujitsu you just did right there.
It's like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Theist.
Trent. Let's go to Jake. Also watching on YouTube. Lots of YouTube callers today. Thanks for watching, everybody on YouTube. Jake is in Illinois. Why are you an atheist, Jake?
Hi. I'm an atheist because I feel that, it says in the Bible that God is all-powerful. He created the world in 6 days or whatever. And while he created this world, he created everything for this world. The world is for his creatures. Why is it that at the same time he makes beautiful plants, animals, and I guess humans, if you don't classify them as animals, why, with a world where that exists, would you create those creatures capable of getting things like cancers? And why would you also create horrible, absolutely horrid diseases that ravage living creatures?
Okay. Well, Jake, I think so far, first, I think it's important, I want to bring up this, since we have some good time to talk about this, and it's a very important issue. We must make sure that this is not an argument against God or a reason to be an atheist, what you've put forward. It's a question. It's a question. Why did God make the world the way he did? And in order to jump from that to say that God doesn't exist, you would have to defend a claim. And that claim would be this. God would never have a reason to make a world like this. So as an atheist has a burden of proof here. Why should I believe God would never make a world like this? Because I can think of some reasons why God would do that. First, would it be wrong for God? God can make anything that's logically possible, right? Since he's the all-powerful creator, he can make basically anything that's logically possible, right?
Bible, yes.
Sure, okay. Would it be wrong if God created, one living animal and, it eats some grass and falls asleep and it dies? It lives for a bit and then it dies. Is God within his rights to make a finite, limited thing that exists for a bit and then doesn't exist anymore?
Sure, if he actually created it, if he wants to make it so it only lives for, say, 20 years, that's fine.
Sure, okay. So it sounds like then God has the right to create things that only exist temporarily. So the things that are not human beings, plants and animals, they don't have immortal souls. They only exist for a limited amount of time. And I think God's within his right to make that. Now, I think the core of your objection is, yes, but many of these creatures suffer pain in their lives. And that seems, why would God do that? I don't have a complete answer for that, but I will say, for that to be an atheistic argument, you'd have to defend the claim God could have no reason for making creatures that can feel pain. And I don't see how one would defend that claim. I can think of one reason God would make creatures that feel pain. It helps them to live. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. There are people who are born without pain receptors in their nerves. Their nerves don't send pain signals to their brain. So like when they put their hand on a really hot stove, their hand just turns to bacon. It just cooks. And so you could see it would be really hard for an animal to function in this world without pain sensors. So that keeps them alive, but it also leads to some difficult and excruciating moments in life. But that's at least one possible reason. So it seems to me, from my perspective, Jake, is that, well, I could see reasons why God would allow pain, and even if there's some things I don't understand, if he's all-powerful, why wouldn't I trust that he has a good reason for that? So do you see where I'm coming from here?
I see what you're talking about with the whole pain receptor thing, but I wasn't so much talking about why do creatures feel pain. Why, if he created things, why would he allow humans the ability to get cancers? Horrible cancers that absolutely destroy one's body.
Right, but Jake, it seems to me you wouldn't be against cancer if it didn't cause pain.
I would absolutely be against cancer.
Well, I mean, you wouldn't. It sounds to me there's two things you have a problem with, I would imagine, when it comes to cancer. It causes pain and it causes death, right?
Well, I'm just wondering why. Yes, of course, that's terrible that exists, but why would he make it like that?
Okay, so but no, let's go back here. So the problem you have with cancer, which is just uncontrolled cellular growth, God has created a physical world that has certain laws of nature. So there are things in nature that are natural that can help us and harm us. Water and fire can give us life. They can also hurt us according to the laws of physics. Cell growth is similar. Cell growth can hurt us, but according to laws of genetics in a limited world, it could also hurt us too. So that could be another reason God wants us to live in a limited world. So when you talk about something like cancer or disease, really your two objections are, why did God make something that causes pain and causes death? But it seems to me, with the example of, God can make a limited thing, we don't have a right to get mad at God for making something that causes death, because we don't have a right to say, hey, you owe me 300 years of life. He doesn't owe us anything. He gave us our lives, and he can take them from us whenever we want to. So if God ends our lives, well, that's up to him, because he's allowed to give us however much life he wants to. It's his gift. And second, when it comes to pain, once again, pain can serve an important purpose to see if we are sick, to go and get treated and to function properly. So I think that you can break those things down. And so the problem of these difficult natural sufferings that are not moral, they're natural, can still be understood given that God made a limited world. And ultimately, as human beings, we have to understand that God can use these things like cancer. Sometimes when people have cancer or suffering, not always, but it can draw people closer to God, and it can help them to understand real purpose in life. I've known people who had cancer, and it completely changed their life around from one that was meaningless to one that actually gave them hope in seeing what really mattered most. So some different things to think about, and I have 3 chapters on this question, or at least 2 chapters on this question in my book, Answering Atheism, if you wanted to check that out. But very good question, and I enjoyed the civil discussion with you, and hope you'll call back at another time.
Thanks very much, Jake. Let's try to go quickly with these questions. Chris, we'll start with you in College Station, Texas, listening on the Catholic Answers app. Let's try to, if you could phrase your answer quickly, Chris, because I don't want us to run out of time for you. Why are you an atheist, Chris?
Yeah, well, so I'm actually Catholic. I'm calling about a friend who's atheist, and he just believes that Christianity is a pagan religion, and it has all of its roots in paganism and just ancient pagan, rituals. And so he doesn't want to believe in a religion that believes that, or that follows that.
Well, I guess I would ask him, how does he know Christianity has ancient pagan rituals? Did he give you any examples?
The Pope's crown, the bishop's mitre, Christmas and Easter were the big ones he talked about.
Sure. Is your friend married or interested at all in marriage? I know it's a side question, but you'll see where I'm going. Sure. Just I want to throw it out there. The reason I bring that up is that in life, we often, as cultures grow and expand in the world, they often adopt things in other cultures that are true and good. So, for example, let's say in ancient Egypt, they had a practice of sacrificing children to crocodiles. I don't know if they really did this, but let's say the ancient Egyptians might have done bad things, like throw babies to crocodiles for various reasons. We wouldn't do that. But the ancient Egyptians did do other things. They would put rings on their fingers to symbolize marriage. And so we say, oh, well, that has meaning and symbolism we agree with, so we might adopt that. And the same thing has happened in Christianity. So, there's architecture in churches, fashion icons, things, robes or clerics or things that Christians might wear may have once had a pagan origin. So we say we baptize them with Christianity. We take what's good in other religions and use it. That if something is true, if it's good, if it's beautiful, then it can be co-opted. A great example of that would be the Pantheon in Rome. It's a church in Rome that actually used to be a temple dedicated to all the gods of Rome. Pantheon, all the gods. That would be Greek, I guess, but it dedicated to all the gods of mythology. And so Christians, once they became the official religion of the Roman Empire, took that over and rededicated it to God and to all of the saints. And so just because something is similar to paganism doesn't mean we just are adopted from it. Also, sometimes pagans in history took things from Christianity and adopted it. So it's a two-way street there. I'd recommend checking out my book, 20 Answers, The Real Jesus. I talk about whether Jesus is a pagan myth, and you can get more information on that from there.
Thanks very much for that, Chris. Thanks to all our callers today, and to you, Trent Horn. Thanks very much for a great 2 hours.
And thank you for having me.
Tomorrow, open forum, 2 hours. We start with Patrick Madrid, first hour. Go to Tim Staples, second hour. That's some pretty heavy hitters. Join us then for more Catholic Answers Live. Oh, and if you didn't get through today, it's open forum. That means any question is welcome, and you don't have to be Catholic to call tomorrow, so try it tomorrow. We'll see you then on Catholic Answers Live.